this bus, these horizontal metal components at the back of the panel are energized. Hey, this is Joel Wolzman, CEO, Master Electrician of Jefferson Electric. Today we're going to install two different types of surge protection in my basement electrical sub panel. You're going to notice, I'm just going to call out some code violations here real quick, pull the cover off. We want to be well versed in everything that's taking place here. But first we've got an incoming call that we need to patch together. Hello, Mary Beth? Annabelle, here you go. You're probably wondering what this old stuff is here. This is an old telephone patch panel, massive patch panel, like commercial size, and low voltage equipment box. That may have been an alarm system. So all this stuff right here is antiquated. So we got water piping system that goes out to the carriage house underground, telephone that's all antiquated. We've got, in some jurisdictions here, this exposed non-metallic conduit located below the top of the panel or even below 8 feet, depending on your local interpretation of the code, is going to be a code violation. Down here, almost everywhere, this is going to be a code violation. And then down here at the bottom, we have this old antiquated conduit body that's missing a cover. There's no chance, zero, that I'm going to find a new cover to that. So this is exposed high current wiring down here that I'm going to need to get addressed. But I'm just going to have to replace it. There's no way I'll find a cover for that. And then another code violation is our working space. We have a video that talks about working space around an electrical panel. I need 15, by code, 15 inches from the vertical center line to the right and to the left of the panel, with a minimum 30 inches overall. Cabinet's in the way. I don't have that. So I've got some things to take care of here, but right now we're installing a surge protector. This electrical panel cover is held on by special electrical panel screws. They're blunt tip, fine thread. You can buy them at the local hardware store if you're missing it. Link in the description below. And they are specific for this application, electrical panel screws, but they're overpriced. But they're a good fit. So right now I'm using my shoulder to hold the panel cover on. I don't want it to swing or pivot when I pull that second to last screw out. I'm almost there, so I'm holding it in place. This is a Square D QO electrical panel that has been installed here, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to find when I take the cover off. All right, easy does it. Pull it out away. There we go. I don't want to kick the breakers off. I'm going to put the screws typically just in the bottom of the panel so I don't lose them. So this doesn't look too bad at first glance right here. Let's see what we uncover. Our main neutral has been identified. Instead of the main lugs being utilized, the wire and the panel are being protected at 125 amps. This is a 225 amp rated bus with a 125 amp breaker that's backfeeding that bus. It looks like neutrals and grounds have not been separated, which this is a sub panel, so that's a requirement. That's something I'm going to need to address here. But best practices for surge protection are these. I want to install, I'm going to demonstrate actually two different types. This is a breaker style, and this is an exterior add-on to any type of panel. The first one, the breaker style surge protector, is panel compatible. It's the same brand, Square D QO. My second is panel agnostic. I can add this Mike Holmes Eaton surge protector to any electrical panel. Couple best practices before I explain exactly why surge protection, how to understand the installation of surge protection. Article, National Electrical Code 242 governs the installation of surge protection. And in fact, in Article 230, is it 67 in the description, surge protection or lightning arresters or SPDs, surge protective devices, same thing, generally speaking, are now required by code for dwellings. That's residential occupancies. I want the surge protection to be as close as physically possible to the incoming feed. Generally, that would be the lugs down here, which are still energized, careful. But right now, that's this breaker. Either way, I'm going to utilize this slot. I'm going to relocate that breaker further up, and I'm going to put my surge protector here, and then I'm going to relabel the panel cover when I'm done to avoid confusion to the next personnel. Breaker's off, rocked out of position here. Okay, I'm utilizing insulated tools, 1. 2, I'm fully aware that this bus, these horizontal metal components at the back of the panel are energized. The plastic is just the housing for the bus. And so take all necessary precautions here. If you can, head outside, shut off the main disconnect, de-energize the whole panel, and play it safe. That's back in place. It's energized. My 2-pole 40 amp breaker for my double oven. I'm rocking in the outside to the middle, and that's going to be a mirror image on the right side if I'm installing a breaker. I pop it in on the outside and then rock it into the middle. You want to be real careful that you don't have a lot to hold on to on the face of the breaker. You could easily slip off and contact that bus. That's now been re-energized. And one thing I'm going to do as a precaution is I'm going to actually tighten down those terminals. Again, I'm using insulated tools. Oh my goodness! Shoot, guys, that's incredibly loose. Let me just show you something real quick. I digress. Check this out. Check this out. That's a stranded conductor right there. Stranded conductors, you have to use the tighten, loosen, or the tighten, wiggle method in order to get those stranded conductors to seat properly inside the terminal. This was very loose, extremely loose. And guess what? I'm the last person to touch it. So if there's a problem, it's now on me. You've got to leave everything. If you touch it, you fix it. That's the rule. If you touch it, you fix it. So, ooh, watch that. I'm gonna loosen this up a little bit. I'm gonna start back. I'm gonna wiggle. I'm gonna tighten. I'm gonna wiggle. I'm gonna tighten. And because I'm taking responsibility for these connections, I'm gonna do 2 more things. I'm gonna do a visual to make sure I don't have insulation underneath the terminal screw, and I'm gonna take a torque screwdriver to it to finalize that connection right here on the inside. Oof. The writing's so small, I can't read it. It's like microscopic. Pull that back out. Take a look. Where are you? 45 inch-pounds. Okay. There it is. Printed on this side of the circuit breaker, 45 inch-pounds is my torque spec. I'm going to respect that. And I'm going to give it one more tighten with the torque wrench. Now that I've freed up the spot closest to the incoming power, I've got my breaker style surge protector. This installs incredibly easily. I'm going to rock in the outside, then the inside. This is only for holding the breaker. There's no electrical connection here. This is where the connection is made. And there are 2 sets of stabs or prongs. That's so that both incoming phases are protected. Check it out. 1. Ooh. Oh, that was tight. I hurt my thumbs. All right. I want everything about this to be as tight and short and close to the incoming and power as absolutely possible. So I'm going to take my neutral. I'm going to think about what I'm going to do in the future as far as separating neutrals and grounds so that this lands on what will be the final neutral bus. And I'm going to put it right there on that top terminal. Nice and short. I'll give myself a little bit to work with, a little bit extra, just in case something goes wrong. And I haven't been using it, but I am going to use my 1000-volt insulated number 2 Klein screwdriver. See the description. I just love this thing. It's very lightweight. It has replaceable cores. Check this out. On this side, it's number 1, number 2. I've got some other options there. Flatheads, Phillips, various sizes. Again, I'm going to make sure that there's no insulation underneath the terminal. I'm going to snug it, nice and snug, not death grip. And the light's on, that means I'm currently being protected. Here are a few thoughts about surge protection. You want to add as many layers of surge protection as humanly possible to protect all of the myriad sensitive electronic components in the home. LED light bulbs, motherboards in furnaces, air conditioners, laptops, cell phones, major appliances. Right now, the average home has like 25 distinct IP addresses. Every single one of those, and then some, has sensitive electronic components. When that surge protector sees an incoming surge, it's going to knock that stray voltage down and it's going to clean up that sine wave. But guess what? It's not going to fully correct the situation. So if you can have surge protection at the service, which is code requirement, secondary surge protection at distribution panels like this Square DQO 125 amp sub panel, and then supplemental surge protection at your computer, at the workstation, in the office, the kitchen, wherever you've got a surge protective plug strip. And guess what, guys? The more you spend, the better protection you're going to find. This is like a $50 surge protector. When I upgrade my outside electrical service, I'm going to go from 200 amps to 1,000 amps. That's right, 1,000 amps. I'm going to have 400 amps dedicated for electric vehicle charging because my wife and I, we have 8 kids. The oldest one is 13. By the time they're all driving, we're going to be all electric. We're going to be an all electric family, country, and we're going to have like 5 Teslas in the driveway. Okay, so it's going to be crazy. I need a ton of juice for EV charging. Secondly, I'm going to have 400 amps to the house, which is pretty reasonable given the fact that it's an 8,000 square foot house. And then I'm going to have 200 amps to the carriage house. So I'm going to install a $1,000 surge protector at the main service. I'm going to have supplemental surge protection at each sub-distribution panel. I'm going to layer the safety and protections that I can get so that every time that stray voltage comes in, it gets knocked down further and further and cleaned up. Because guess what? Appliances don't just fail. Light bulbs don't just fail if they take one surge. A lot of times, it's much more likely, much more common that your house is actually, or your business is actually taking surges on a pretty routine basis. When capacitor banks of the utility company have the open close mechanism, the things that they do to balance the power, to power factor, clean up the power factor so you're getting good, clean power, pure sine wave power. It's not really truly pure, but cleaner power. The things that they do actually can cause these mini surges, these mini hits. And so if you're in an area where you're buying these LED bulbs that have like 50,000 hour life and they're failing in 2,000 hours, 3,000 hours, 4,000 hours of runtime, guess what? It might be that you purchased cheap bulbs. It might be that you got a bad pack of bulbs. It might be that you've got a loose neutral issue, which is kind of subtle and underlying. Or it could be that you're getting hits from the utility company. And so slowly over time, cheaper electronics, which have fewer built-in protections, tend to fail sooner. And so every time you install a surge protector, you clean up that power a little bit more, you knock it down, that large inrush gets cut down, and so you have a cleaner output. But again, layer that surge protection, protect those appliances, because usually things fail slowly over time. And it's not one major incident like a lightning strike, a squirrel in the transformer, even a big squirrel. It's not likely that it's just going to be one event. But your exposure is not just your property. It's not just your panel. It's not just things that happen on the immediate vicinity. Your exposure to an electrical hazard is the entire local grid. I'm not going to say the whole city, but I'm going to say square blocks, even a kilometer in each direction. Anything that takes place on the local utility infrastructure is going to affect you and it's going to affect me. So this is my second of layered surge protection that I'm going to provide to this panel. All right, now let's look at the alternative installation. This has got a little bit more to it, but again, a pretty universal application. If you've got an older panel and you can't find a surge protector that's rated to be compatible with your panel. All right, now it's surge protector type 2. I'm going to be installing a breaker. Again, back to the nearest location to this main incoming feed. And the bus works like this. What I'm saying is that these two spots are equally close to the incoming feed, and it's not like serpentine or anything of that nature. So as close as I can get the breaker, and as near and close as I can get the wire. In this case, the Mike Holmes surge protector comes with these leads. Again, I want all these leads to be as short as possible. I'm not so worried about the ground, and maybe not even so much about the neutral. But I'm going to install it in the side knockout because I've got an obstruction here. I'm going to route that wiring as short as possible. So I've got to create a little space here. It's getting dicey. I'm not going to pretend like I haven't ever seen an arc. And usually when there's an arc, there can be some flying bits of material. So I'm wearing my safety glasses. I highly recommend, if you're not an experienced professional, that you do shut off power, the main here, the main outside, whatever you can get to. And I advocate for safety. You're going to have to be like a fourth-year apprentice at Jefferson Electric before you are working inside this panel in this manner. All right, I've created space on the inside. I'm gingerly knocking out my knockout there, using my needle nose to do a little surgery. I want to extricate that knockout. I don't want to leave trash inside my panel. There's already enough going on in there. The surge protector comes equipped with the 1/2-inch lock nut. Again, 1/2 inch equates to a 7/8 knockout. It's the smallest size that has been provided in your panel. And because I've got congestion, I'm actually going to tape these leads up to get them through all that, or they're going to fight me the whole way. Nothing magic, just a little electrical tape. Needle nose again. There it goes. Nice and easy. Time for that lock nut. You'll see, if you can get it real close on that, there's orientation to that lock nut. On this side, the teeth, you can feel the serrated aspect of the teeth, and on this side, it's smooth. So I'm going to keep my this taped up. You'll notice that the leads are already pre-stripped. So one thing I want to be mindful of is where that lead is. If my neutral, my white wire, pops against a hot right now, a good chance I'll blow out the surge protector before I even get going. So serration into the panel. I'm going to slide it on. I'm going to work it in there. Pretty tight fit. These are not insulated gloves. They would provide some insulating value, no doubt, but not technically insulated, so watch out. Hello. And this is pretty tedious, getting that lock nut squared up and on there. Ask me if I've ever been shocked before. I'll answer you in the comments. Oh, come on. Come on. Ooh, oh, there it is. Righty-tighty, as looked at from this direction. It's easy to become disoriented. I've specifically chosen a back knockout so that the surge protector would be, could be easily secured to the wall. I don't want it getting knocked and breaking off right at that thin plastic collar. So I'm gonna drill that, put 2 Tapcons in there, and snug it up. So that's why I chose a knockout at the back that's harder to reach. I like everything to be tool tight, so flathead is my favorite hammer. All right, now here, this is where a little bit of magic comes in. I'm going to take my neutral and ground down here to my, what is improperly at this point, a common neutral and ground terminal bar. I'm going to be mindful to use the right gauge with my strippers because these are very finely stranded wires and I don't want them getting nicked or damaged or I'll start losing strands pretty quick. I'm going to take the strands and twist them to the right. I'm going to terminate grounds and neutrals always under separate terminals. And here's one thing to note. I'm going to say it over and over again, that terminals that are rated for one wire should only be used for one wire. Every terminal will have a rating. If you don't know, you've got to default to the lowest possible factor, and that would be one wire per terminal. So each wire there has its own terminal. I've got a little bit to work with, but not a whole bunch of extra clogging up my panel. And now, here it is. I'm going to make this as short as possible. I'm going to avoid tight or sharp bends on my black and red, and I'm going to twist them clockwise or counterclockwise, doesn't matter, with a total of 1 twist per inch. Like I said, you're going to get a lot more out of reading the manufacturer's instructions than out of the National Electrical Code when it comes to SPDs, surge protective devices. So 1 twist per inch. You know, the only time that this applies and you're doing this method is with surge protection that I'm aware of, correct me if I'm wrong. And generally speaking, electricity doesn't care at all whether the bends in the wire are sharp or loose or however that plays. But with surge protection, absolutely. Another thought, how do I size my breaker? What's the minimum and maximum, or what's the optimal breaker size for surge protection? Well, in this case, the instructions tell me that a 2-pole 30-amp breaker is just fine. There are minimums and maximums, and you should always respect the instructions that have been provided. Something that's interesting to note is that these squared EQO breaker terminals are actually rated for 2 conductors. It's not typical, it's not common, but it is the case here. Again, making sure I've got no insulation underneath that terminal screw. About a 3/4 of an inch strip, 1000-volt insulated screwdriver is my friend here. Breaker's in the off position. I'm going to give you a real up close on that here in a second, but I can't get my fingers in there at the same time. There it is. All right, 1 twist per inch, as short as possible. Again, just a tad extra in case I mess something up. I'm going to do the tug test. Here goes. I've got 2 green lights. That means I'm actively protecting phase A and phase B. If one of those lights goes out, it means I've probably suffered a surge on one of the phases, or maybe even 20, 30, 40 smaller surges, and the surge protector has been fried. Thankfully, surge protector is cheaper than about any electronic component in your home, maybe other than a light bulb. This is like 80 bucks. Put a link in the description to it. Join us for the next video on installing receptacles in your home. Floor receptacles, water softener receptacles, GFCI receptacles,